Hey folks, welcome to Snowpal podcast. Our guest today is Frank Vitetta. Frank is the CEO and founder of Orchid Box. Frank, thanks for taking the time to chat.
Hi, Krish. How you doing?
I'm all right. Before we get into the topic, can you give a quick intro about yourself and your company to our audience?
Yeah, so I'm founder of Orchid Box. Is a B2B lead gen agency. We're based in London, UK. We specialize in driving new business to international clients. We work with the US, with the UK, with European clients. Um, Recently, we've been very much like everyone else, be interested in trying to get more leads coming from AI or as an AI recommendation to our clients, so we can explore what that entails, and we can maybe talk about this in the podcast.
Cool. Thank you for that introduction. We're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to talk about vibe coding. We're going to talk about how people use AI, for
Brilliant.
doing their searches and products online. But before we do that, based on what you just said, just so we learn a little bit more about you and the problems that you've been recently solving, can you sort of give us an example of a type of problem that you're currently working on solving? I mean, you can name the client or you don't have to, but you can just
Yeah,
sort of introduce us to the problem
yeah.
and how you're actually able to help your clients solve those problems.
Yeah, so I think the main problem that we are facing is we are getting less and less traffic flowing to websites. Is because Google and LLMs, so ChatGPT, Claude, etc., they tend now to reply directly to the user. So there is no reason for people to go and browse websites. Now, for my clients, that's a big problem because they have KPIs and they care about how many visitors are visiting my sites, how many conversions we're getting. So now this is becoming a real problem, um, an industry problem. So I think year on year, we have an average drop rate of around 35% on average. So that's one problem. The second issue that we have, especially in Europe, we have privacy. So there is the usual GDPR, which is this new law that came about with the European Union about 3 4 years ago.
Right.
So now we need to have this pop up, and users need to give consent every time they browse a website, and in order for analytics to be fired by the browser. So there is also these other problems because people are obviously more concerned about privacy. So we're not tracking. We are basically getting less traffic, and we're tracking less real people on the site. So we're seeing drop rates of over 50%. Some clients 80% drop off rate, which is obviously very alarming and is an industry problem. It's not just us facing it. Um, it becomes very hard to justify our invoices because obviously what are you doing? We're not getting any traffic, we're not getting conversions. But the bottom line is that the people they still need services, right? So they're just using different ways to discover services and products. So I think the industry is now transitioning from SEO to AIO, which is getting websites to be optimized for agents and AI crawlers. Um, so there are differences. So when a crawler, AI crawler, comes to your site, will
So hang on,
behave.
Frank. Sorry,
Yeah,
let me interrupt you there. So that's a good introduction to the problem.
yeah,
Essentially, people are, questions are being answered either through Claude or ChatGPT or by going online to Google because it's got the AI mode and people don't have necessarily the click-through rates are not there anymore. About a
no,
year ago or so, when Google was about half the price that they are currently, I think today they closed close to it $400. I think they were at $150. Like I want to say maybe about a year ago, right? They've gone up. if I'm not wrong, they've gone up like about 125, 130%, if memory serves me right, in the last 12 months as a company. The reason I mentioned that as a stock price here is that there was almost like an existential crisis a little over a year ago before they won the lawsuit that related to Chrome and whatnot, right? I live in the suburbs of DC, and if I'm not wrong, the lawsuit probably happening in
Yeah,
downtown here. Things
yeah,
changed dramatically after that. Now, at that point, uh, people were like, hey, you know what? Nobody's going to need search anymore, not the way they needed in the past. So
that's
Google's
right.
going to have an existential crisis. Fast forward 12 months, things look very different now. Now, again, in terms of revenue, Alphabet does a lot of things as a company, but the last time I checked, a lot of their money should be coming from search. I mean, I don't know how it is in the last 3 months or so, but I have to believe a lot of that money is still coming from search. Now, if the click through rates, I mean, sure, they're getting money through Google Cloud and YouTube and some Waymo,
Yeah,
and they have a lot of these, Gemini and other sources of revenue, uh, making them the second largest company, just probably a couple $100 billion, if that, behind Nvidia. I wish I had the numbers, but I can pull it up in terms of the search revenue. How do we explain the search revenue then, Frank? Because if people are not clicking through and if questions are being answered, how does Google make money through search then?
yeah. So it's a very good question. So they actually make more money now because the only way to be above the AI overview is to pay for it. So to pay to sponsor your company, so buy keywords. So a lot of my clients now they spend more money on PPC or AdWords because they have the guaranteed placement. They know that the ad that will come above the AI overview. Um, that's the case. There will be obviously in the future integration with AI, so you would be able to sponsor your product or business through that. So currently, Copilot, which obviously is heavily used by Microsoft users, has already an integration with ChatGPT. So if you do um, a max campaign, which means you use all the Microsoft or Bing network. That means that, especially in the US, it's quite popular. That means that you access all the partnerships that they have, um, and obviously AI or Copilot is one of them. So eventually, and I think this is currently just working with products. So let's say you start a conversation with Copilot saying, "My husband," and obviously they know about you and they know about your background, they know about the history. So they say, I want to give a present to my husband who is turning 45, in 2 weeks' time. What do you reckon? And you start obviously conversating with AI, and because obviously this is excellent because they know about you, they know about your husband. You obviously had previous conversations, and they know that your husband is into running. So they might suggest, so you should try to look at running shoes, and then you say, oh, perfect, give me a list of top 5 running shoes, and that point you get the ad. So you're getting really extremely tailored ads. And I have a friend actually that went through the whole process, and then he
So
clicked
Frank,
through an
let's
ad.
say in your example, that's a good example there, right? So you said give the wife is saying give me the top 5 running shoes. Now let's draw a parallel here. The quality of that conversation, the way we perceive it as humans, even though you're conversing with the bot, the way you rate that conversation is how genuine those responses are. Now, if the response is ad driven, you're going to trust that
Yeah.
conversation a little bit lesser. So, how does it draw the balance between what are organic answers coming from data that LLM does have versus actually ads that someone plays so they show that to you?
Yeah, so I think there is a lot of debate about this because obviously you're not going to trust the engines anymore if you know that they have been paid to give you a
Right.
particular answer. So I think at the moment the product recommendations they click in um, only at the end of a conversation, not at the beginning, but just when you basically had a kind of a really good uh, chat with the engine. They know exactly what to do, and I think it's clearly marked that is sponsored, so you know that you're clicking on an ad. I think that's very important that you know that someone is paying for that.
No, but that
Uh,
we do know, right, Frank? Even when Google returns results, you see the sponsored label
yeah,
or something along those lines. But but that's okay, that's fine. So does it mean in your example you're going to get some organic results of the best five shoes, running shoes, and ads at the same time, correct? It's not either or.
yeah, I think so. That's what they are experimenting, where the sponsor result will be clearly marked that is a sponsor result. But the thing is, you need to remember that Google and Bing, they've tested this model, over a decade, almost 2 decades. So they know, and that's why with AdWords, for instance, they care about ad affinity. So they want to give you the best ads they can when you do a search. So that means ad quality is very important. So that means that the ad really need to match your request.
No, no,
If it
I
doesn't,
understand that, right? But to
yeah,
go back to what you said earlier, right, Frank, which is you're helping
yeah,
your clients be found essentially, right? The challenge is that because of all of these types of responses, conversations you're having with chatbots, they're not needing to click through into those websites. How does that problem get solved here? Because you're showing the ads, sure, you can pay for ads and have those ads be shown, but can you speak a bit to the answer engine optimization? How do you make sure that your pages, let's say you're a company that's actually selling running shoes, how do you end up showing up organically in the results there?
yeah. So I think you need to start diversifying the way that you think about acquiring customers. So one way will be Google. I mean, it's still the biggest search engine in the world. People are still using it. I know there are AI overviews when you search for it, but they are largely based on organic results. So they're largely based on a summary of what you see underneath. So there's been a study. So about 65% of the website that you see or the citations that you see in the overview is largely based on Google results. When you do search on ChatGPT, you do the same. So ChatGPT will search Google. Apparently, 18% of Google traffic currently comes from LLM bots. So the LLM, when you ask something to LLM, they go search Google and give you an answer. So SEO is not dead. It just is taking a different shape. So
Ah, that's interesting.
if you're still number one in Google, the LLM will tell you, that you will recommend you because they find you on Google. So it's just obviously the user is not clicking on the link, but the company is still being discovered. So
You know what, Frank?
as
You
you,
make a very, very important and interesting point there. Let's dig a little bit deeper. So
yeah,
you're saying 18% of Google search is coming through these LLMs and requests. So let's say I went and typed something in Claude or ChatGPT, and while it's looking for data, it's also using results from Google. But the
yeah,
interaction that it does have with Google, I have to presume, maybe correctly or incorrectly so, that it's different from the way a human would have searched on Google, or is that search exactly the same? In other words, if you created a page or a website that was beautiful from an SEO standpoint, I'm presuming that that's not going to help the chatbot here, right? You're going to have to optimize your pages slightly differently so they are found by agents versus humans. Is that right?
yeah. I think you're absolutely right. So basically, you have a conversation with the agent, so they understand your question. They break your prompt into different search queries. They're called query fan out. So, and then let's say your is a generic query. So what they do, they break this query and they will perform 4 or 5 Google searches. They get all the results from Google, and then they go and crawl the websites, and then they gather the information. that is as obviously the user doesn't see all of that because they're very fast. So now there is this sort of a new industry that is kind of flourishing at the moment, which is how you can optimize your website for these LLMs. Because think about it, they need to get their answers very very fast. So in the old days, Google will come to the website and crawl your website, save your website into memory, and when someone was searching Google, Google had a copy of your website on their server, so you would perform a search on their server, and then obviously they were saying, okay, this information is on this page, and then the user would be there was going to be redirect on that page. Now with the LLM is different, right? Because they go crawl the site real time to get real data, gather all the data from the website, understand the whole data, and then reply back to you with either a table or an article, etc. So that means that site speed is extremely important. The way that you structure the HTML of the site is very very important because it's a fast retrieval process. So the way that you so this is so some we've been advising some clients, for instance, to create a markdown version of the page. Why markdown? So markdown is different from HTML because HTML has a lot of styling, has a lot of repetition, is a longer file, but markdown is ideal. The LLMs have been trained using markdown. So for some clients, we're saying, well, you can leave your HTML page for the users and for Google, but actually create a markdown version of that page for fast retrieval, so that when ChatGPT comes to your site to understand and place you in a list of recommendations where
So
a
Frank,
client
why
is,
why even mark down? Why could not it have been just text? Why even have any styling whatsoever? Because even markdown has some level of styling, right? So why does it
yeah,
have to be marked down? Can it be just a text file then?
it can, but with markdown you have um, hierarchy. So if you're like you can have hyperlinks, you can have title, you can have a header, you can have a table
Okay, so
structure.
got it. So in
Uh,
other words, it needs some kind of a style, but not the whole 9 yards like HTML has essentially.
That's right, yeah, because markdown is markdown. It's a very simple styling. You have H1, H2, H3, you have a table styling, you have a bold, you have italic, you have links. Very, very simple way
So what
to
does it mean?
structure a
So
page.
Frank, this is very interesting. Sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
this is very interesting. So I want to just make sure I follow along. So now you have a
yeah.
very beautiful website that's rich in colors and graphics and images and video. But what you're now saying is that's no good really for LLMs, maybe not as much. So let's create a parallel version. But are we seeing this in action? Like, can we currently, like at this minute, if I want to see one of them, do you know if there are two versions of a site, like a regular HTML version and a markdown version? Like, how are companies actually doing it today?
So there is this talk about the third web, where the third web is designed for agents and bots. So it's a parallel universe where every website has a cut down version that is easy retrieved by LLMs. So it basically is not parallel website. In the HTML, you say an alternative um, is which is a correct markdown anyway. So you can say an alternative page of this one where you're in is also here, and this is a markdown version of that page. So
But is that
it's
something that's, but
Mhm.
Frank, do we have any like that today? I know we may not have it for
Yeah,
all the websites, but like, is there an
yeah.
example of one you've seen that we can actually
I
see here?
I can give you my client's name where we worked on it
Oh,
if you want.
sure. Can we? Yeah,
Yeah,
I wanna like pull it up here while we talk. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So let me share their URL. Is
Yeah.
elsewhere
I can.
elsewhere.com. Can you are you able to see the
Yep.
HTML?
Let me try to pull this
Yeah.
elsven.com. Give me a second. I'm going to do a screen share here. Okay. You see that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Go for it. Speak. Can you
Uh,
speak
yeah.
to this though? This is yeah.
Yeah. So go to any blog post. So if you click on blog and then you go to the
This one here.
yeah, go to why enterprise AI fails to deliver.
Sorry, was it here? Okay. Enterprise. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think let me see if I just do dot MD. Yeah, okay. So if you go up all the way up where you see the URL, can you see the URL
Okay.
at the top? Yeah. So
Yep. The
if you
why
just
enterprise
remove
AI fails
slash,
to yeah.
yeah. So if you
Okay.
remove the slash and we remove the slash at the end, you put dot MD for Markdown.
There you
Yeah.
go. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Uh, so this is the
That,
markdown version of it. Okay.
that's the Markdown
That's interesting.
version of that. Yeah.
So how
So
does this
when an
work
LLM
now? Sorry, go for it.
So when LLM comes to the site, they know what to look for. So rather than reading the HTML page, they can read this page and they can get fast retrieval. So the other page, you obviously you saw you have images, you have styling, you got a lot of noise, you got link to other pages, a lot of noise. You probably have to download an asset. There might be a video, but here it's just the article. So if you're trying to train LLM on your services or what you're doing, you probably want them to see this. All right, so
So
this is
Frank, let
one
me
thing.
ask you this. So are the LLMs is this a standard, so to speak, meaning when you have a .md version of a page, is the LLM actually looking for it first and only when it does not find it, it goes to the non.md version?
Now you tell them in the HTML. In the HTML, there is a directive that tells
Ah,
them,
I see what you mean. So if I go here and I do a view page source, right? Somewhere here you're saying
yeah,
there's a directive that says there's a markdown version.
yeah, is called link rel equal alternative type equal text slash markdown. Is
Okay,
a
hang on.
yeah,
Sorry, I actually opened it, but I didn't realize that it opened it on a different tab. So you're not
yeah.
seeing it. Sorry, can you say that again?
If you go to this page, I'm just sharing.
Okay.
Can I share my screen?
I don't. Does it let you do? Let's try this. I'm pretty sure it can. Let me stop sharing. Can you try? Yeah. Can you hit share and see if
Yeah.
you're able to share it?
Yeah. Can you see it?
Yep. I can. We can see it.
Yeah, look, it's here. So I'm on the HTML page, and it's here. Look,
Okay.
link rel equal alternative type equal text slash
Oh,
markdown.
text markdown. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
they
how
know.
it, that's the directive to the agents to say, you know what, there is a markdown version of it, just go use it. And tell me something, when you do have the markdown and not the HTML version, the content is available in both places. Now, if you did
Yeah.
not have the directive, it would have gone to the original page. Where is the, yeah, you can stop sharing. I think we got the essence of it. Yeah. So, Frank, where does the difference come into play? So, let's take a scenario where the page did not have the MD directive and you didn't have a markdown version, and you had a markdown version. Because the content is essentially the same, how is the markdown version helping the LLM make better decisions?
Well, because there is a lot of noise, right, in the HTML. There's a lot of noise. So just telling you this because in the old days, Google and crawlers, they love to have a long page, right? They used to love extremely long website uh, pages, HTML pages. Now, because every time they need to crawl a page, they need to save the content of this page. Data is money, so they're
Yeah.
not saving long pages anymore. They're only saving, if I remember correctly, the first 100 kilobytes of a page, which means that if you have a lot of noise on the top of the page, like you usually do, because you will probably have all your calls to
Right.
third-party
Yeah.
services. You will have JavaScript calls, maybe you even have some JavaScript code or some CSS, etc. Then the content is way below everything else, and is get lost. They are unable to see against all this noise. Then you have navigation, then you have footer, then you have other stuff that you don't really need.
Right. Yeah.
With a markdown, it's just the content. So you remove the noise, the file is much smaller, they can get it easily, they know it's a markdown, there is nothing else they need to worry about. So there is no post processing that needs to be done on the page. They know they really really use markdown. As you know, a lot of now skills, they're all written in markdown. It seems to be becoming the default agent language. Now
So which
if
means
you
when the
go
so let's say in my question of you had a markdown version and did not have a markdown version, and when in both cases the content was identical, if there
yeah,
were not have been a markdown version, is the LLM actually choosing not to go into the HTML pages? In other words, do you run the risk of not getting picked up at all, or do you still get picked up, but perhaps there's other repercussions?
I think the risk is, if for instance you have a very long page, the interesting bit might be at the end of the page, and and they might not, but they might not pick it up. It's just, if it's at the beginning of the page, maybe no problem, maybe no difference, but you don't know what bits they are going to
Oh,
use
I see what you mean.
on a
So, which means,
blog
Frank,
post.
as we get started with the third web, as you called it there, right, where you're having the
Yeah,
markdown versions, uh, do you? I mean, how do you recommend people do it? One way to do it is you take the core, the crux of the content from the HTML version, minus the graphics, images, colors, and yada yada yada, and then create the page. Or do you actually have different content? I mean, similar that's related to the page that the HTML shows, but perhaps the verbiage is quite different from the original page.
I
How
know.
do you see this pan out?
Yeah, okay, so this is something that people, I think, are experimenting at the moment. So is quite a new thing that people have started doing. So I suspect that you might get a penalty from Google, because it used to be in the SEO was called cloaking. So you were hiding keyword on the page, uh, white on white, and they couldn't see
Oh,
it. So this is kind of an equivalent, because you will have a very long page just for the engine, where you were hiding content using JavaScript or CSS. So
I
this
see.
is the equivalent. So I would suspect you probably get a penalty. They will probably, and I think Google used to do that. They will take a screenshot of the page, and then take a screenshot. Well, take a look at the HTML. If they're different, that means you're trying to game the system. You're
Oh,
you know
I see what you mean.
yeah.
So ideally,
So
the markdown should be very similar in terms of content, if not identical to the HTML version.
yeah. So can I just say that we're talking about agents, right? So we're talking about real-time crawling, where the you ask a specific question to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, and they don't have the answer in their current training, and they go online and look for the answer. So they need to have, trust these resources. They probably do Google search, and then they get to the site, they go and crawl the site. So this is one thing. There is another thing, which is agents. So you could instruct an agent to do something on your behalf. So an agent, when they browse the web, they browse the web visually. They are not looking at the HTML code. They're visually going to a website and they're trying to work out what's going on the website. So you know when we talked about earlier on about you got beautiful website and you know you're just doing this markdown. So this is one example where we just do the markdown, which is you're asking something. But if you ask an agent to perform something on your behalf, then there is another problem, which is agent accessibility. So in at the moment, we're worried about accessibility for humans, but I
Right.
think there is a new trend now about worrying about accessibility for an agent. I have a client and they have a beautiful website. Unfortunately, 80% of the, the a very very important page to them is where they sell courses, um, is hidden. Why is hidden? Because they have tabs. They have a list of products, and the agents that are unable to understand that they need to click on the tab to get this content. A
Mm,
human understand, okay, this is a content, but an agent needs to be visually trained to understand, well, when you go to that page, that thing is actually a button. So I think there is a new wave now of designing websites that an agents can understand. So an agent can understand a button because it's clearly visible. So they know it's a square, there is some text inside, there is nothing around, and it's stand, you know, usually is in the middle of the page or on the left and the right. So they can clearly see it. But if it's something that is very well designed site where you have background images and then you have a button on top, they don't know. And then my client in particular, if someone goes to Claude and say, okay, what courses this company can offer my business, only the first one comes up because
wow.
it's open. The other ones are not coming up because they're closed and agent doesn't know.
Amazing. So, Frank, what I have a bunch of things to ask you there. Very interesting points, by the way. Thank you for those. How
Yeah,
do
no
you?
worries.
So, how? What are some things that you're recommending that client do so the agent is now able to discover not just the first and the only one of the courses, but all the courses?
Yeah, so the first thing is they need to run a test to see if whatever agents, you know, Claude or you know different one, they can grab every single information they have on the page, because a page may be an interactive page, right? So there's been a trend lately where you have one page websites where everything is in one page. You don't need to have a
Especially
different
if
URL.
people use Canva, like sometimes, for a couple of our websites at Snowpal, we did use Canva, and Canva, I think, if I'm not wrong, only creates single page websites essentially.
Yeah, so a single page website is usually is an interactive page. So you have interactive elements. You have to go and click and browse. So those, I think those ones are the ones at risk because, again, I think if you have a carousel as well. So if you have a carousel where people need to click and it's not clear, then they need to click, or sometimes they need to swipe with
Right.
you know this is something that an agent won't be able to work it out because they just take a screenshot of the page. They just think, you know, and it's a screenshot, right? So a human will see maybe there is an animation or an
Right. I
interaction,
know what you mean.
something pulsing that you see. Okay, so you know there are loads of stuff that we do without even
So, in
thinking.
other words, so Frank, is the solution for that client and that problem is to essentially redesign that page so it becomes agent friendly, correct? That's what they have to do.
I think so. I think there has to be a new trend. So we used to use this word user-centric design, but now it's more like agent-centric design. Obviously, I
So
don't
does
know
it
if
mean
this.
so
Yeah,
so we talked about websites there. Let's talk about web applications, right? And I'll go back to, one of the products we have is a project management platform that we launched a few years ago. Now people have asked me, hey, if you were to do it today, how different the UI might look? And I have no hesitation in saying that it'll look 180 degrees different, right? Because the world
yeah,
has changed in the last 3 years or so. So when you're talking about web applications and interactions that we have, not just websites, but mostly web applications, how are you seeing them be designed these days, Frank? I mean, are we kind of having to design them for humans and agents at the same time? Or do you see clear separations, much like the example of this markdown, where you've designed a version of that application for whatever it's worth for agents, and then there's another version for humans?
yeah. I don't know. I think they will probably have to just design one website to accommodate human and agent. I think it would be a lot of work to think about to maintain two website, two platforms. Also, there would be issues with Google duplicated content across multiple URLs. So I would say we are basically every time we design now, we need to think about a human and an agent, where an agent needs to be able to understand. You need to think about, if I if I screenshot if I screenshot this page and I send it to someone, a human, would they be able to understand that there is a button here that they need to perform this action, or they need to press something to watch a video? So we need to ask. Yeah. So I think we need. I don't think it's a major redesign. It's just we need to have this in mind when we think about designing.
So, Frank, you're basically talking about how to design these pages and websites and applications going forward. So it's both
Yeah.
agent accessible slash friendly and user friendly. This requires a complete rethink. For many years or decades, we've talked about, like you mentioned there, right? You mentioned earlier, user experience and UI and UX and things of that nature. Now we're going to have to rethink this. Can you take an example, the one that makes the most sense to you, of a website? It could be Amazon, it could be Starbucks, or it could be something you're working on for a client
Yeah.
of yours. How does it currently look? You could just take one of those pages and sort of give us a high level overview of how it looked, and we can try to imagine this as we go along and sort of speak to how it should look. Like, what is the transition that people have to start thinking about?
Yeah. So I think if you have black and white, black and white, very very plain colors, so that when you take a screenshot, obviously every single letter and character needs to be understood, so it needs to be clearly readable. So we say I will never place an image, a background image under a text. I will probably avoid having carousels. So I will try to have all the content exposed on the page, so that easy accessible to agents. And I have seen a trend, which I found interesting, which is massive menus. And so you can go to um, uh, Ernest and Young, ey.com website, and you can see these mega menus. They used to be quite popular in the past. Then we went to a burger menu that was kind of trendy, then minimalistic menus, and now these mega menus are back. Where I
I'm gonna,
think there is.
Frank, I'm gonna pull that up while you're talking. So actually, that's where people can think of an example here.
Mm,
So you're talking about, if I go, it's funny, they still have a carousel, which probably needs to go away at some point.
yeah,
But you're talking about these ones,
yeah,
right?
yeah. Look at that. Look how
Wow.
massive. Look how massive it is. And I think the reason why they've designed these mega menus is because the agent can have a quick access to the juicy content of the site without getting crazy and browsing. Think about it. They go and see services. They click on services and the menu comes up. Then they go on tax and then they click on tax and then something else comes up. Easy to navigate, black
And
and
is
white.
and,
Or
and Frank, is this happening in, you mentioned, with the way Google did it, you mentioned that they have a version of it in their cache, so they don't have to go look up elsewhere, but they're looking at content in their very own servers that's indexed. But when you're talking LLMs, you mentioned earlier that they're doing this in real time. So when you're
yes,
talking about agents going to services and strategy by EY, Parthenon, or whatever, are you talking about them doing it in real time when you actually asked a question and it's
yeah,
trying to formulate a good answer? It is doing all of this in real time, correct?
yes. If you task an agent to do something on your behalf, that's what they will do. If you have a open claw and which has a an agent that is tasked with a job, and the job of an agent is to go and look for a service online because you task them with that. That's exactly what they will do. Now depending on the frontier LLM they're using, if you use an expensive model, um, let's say a Claude, a 4.7, which costs a lot of money. If you use that, then I guess is easier for them to navigate. If you use a open source model like Llama 4, will be harder to navigate. So and will take longer to get the reply. And it's possible that if your agent has a time limit, they might not even be able to get to the page on time and they move on to the next website. Do you know what I mean?
Right. But I also want to ask you, right? So, in other words, we used to have these traditional XML based site maps, right? That's, to
Yeah,
define the content of your website essentially. But I also know that with the LLMs, you have these, based on what you mentioned earlier as well, you have the concise versions of these types of site maps, right? So, what's the difference between having a concise version of a site map that the agent can look at versus a very detailed menu? Because I would have thought if the agent wants to look at something, wouldn't a site map, even a concise version of a site map, be a better place to look and peruse than actually literally going through these clicks on the pages? So why have a detailed menu versus stick that site map into a more shorter form of a
yeah,
site map, so to speak?
yeah. So you're referring to the LLM text protocol. The thing is has been set up, which is a more descriptive version of a sitemap. So a sitemap has a list of all the pages. Technically, you might omit the pages, but in theory, you should have a URL and you should have a last update as a like the two main fields, so that when they come back, they might just scroll and say, okay, I know about these pages. I've got them in my index, or I don't know about these because they've been recently added, and that's how it works for Google. Now, for the LLMs, we had something similar, which again is not being used by LLMs as far as I know. There's only some. I think Claude has tried to push it, but the other ones they didn't agree. So ChatGPT is not using it. So the LLM text is saying a description saying, okay, so this is my business. If you want a service page, the service page is here. I This is the area where I write new content, which is the blog. So it's more a descript. It's like more like you're telling someone how the website is structured without giving a list of pages. You're just saying if you're looking for a blog post, is actually the blog posts that are inside the insight uh, URLs. So or the product pages, they are slash products. The Every time I have a new product, uh, you look for slash new. So it's kind of instructions to the agents when it comes to the website. doesn't contain a list of all pages. It's just an overview of what's going on. So this is why you would set and forget sort of things. Like you do it when you redesign the website. The website structure won't change. You will probably have new pages, but they will sit inside the current structure, where the sitemap is ongoing, something that it grows with the site. So as far as I know, the LLMs, they don't read the sitemap, and probably they don't even read the LLM text. I think they just rely on what is on the page. Uh, what SEOs are doing, what people optimizing for LLMs are doing, we are now giving a lot of JSON. So we're basically it's called rich metadata. So there is a protocol like schema.org that we've been using in SEO for a very long time, is defining entities that a machine can understand. So you will say, I'm on a company page, and there is a standard that is used by all the search engines, that you will define a company page with the name of the company, with the address, with the phone number. So it's very easy for a machine to understand this data. So rather than them going and looking on the page for a phone number, because obviously they need to write regular expression, or there is not really an HTML equivalent. That's why I think Google and the others, they said, okay, rather than giving me the information on the HTML, where it's difficult to extract this information, it can be everywhere on the page, I'm telling you that you could write in a JSON format, which is easy to understand, information about a product, an address, a company information, a course. So you have JSON data for a lot of entities, a book, a restaurant, a review. So now there is a trend of designing websites with that thing in mind, which means there is absolutely no impact on design, because the design and the look and feel of the page stays the same. You just add this additional uh, JSON inside the HTML. So, and that will be uh, easy for Google to pick up. So if you go in Google Search Console, now you can even see errors that your rich metadata might have. You're missing this field that is required, or you've, you're using a character in a numeric field, or so you can have like a product page that has a lot of attributes, like a color, and they know exactly. So when they filter the data, they know what everything is. So I think there's a new trend. So this is not markdown. This is an agreed format that everyone agreed on, and so for everyone is easy to work with that. So we're now reviewing web pages based on, okay, so this is an event page. I should add event a JSON and an event JSON, or okay, this is a review page, or this page has, okay, so this page has an event, actually lists a product, there is also a course, talks about my business. So then you start adding more and more elements onto the page. This one has an FAQ at the end, so we should add the FAQ JSON at the end. So it, again, it's just going back and trying to change the HTML on the page, so to help them. Basically, you need to give them as much help as possible. So we did a piece of research to say, okay, so in the old days with Google was about the content on the page, but also was all about the mentions that you're getting from third parties' websites. So how popular you are and your website is. So, and that was determined by the number of backlinks that your website had. So now they're called citations. So it's the same thing, but it's just your name or your company name being present on other sites. And I think there was a rush on getting your name on Reddit. So there was someone find out that LLMs, they loved Reddit, and they loved LinkedIn. So everyone rushed on Reddit and start spamming Reddit, start spamming LinkedIn, because a lot of time this they were considered as authoritative sources, because on Reddit they have a very strong spam policies, so they don't let you write, or I think they rely on self moderators as well. So every single subreddit is moderated, and they don't let AI written content go through. They're very good at that. So Reddit was a great way for LLMs to say, okay, this is a human opinion, or is a human that is recommending this product or this service. The other one was LinkedIn. So in the early days, we could see a lot of people using LinkedIn articles to rank for anything. Um, yeah, so I think this, as usual, as soon as people start spamming and using it, then of course Google or the LLMs, they will change, because then you get rubbish again, and the service becomes unusable. So I think now they have less importance. But I think there was a time last year, the same time last year, where Reddit traffic quadruple uh, in a very few months. So it's just because it was getting all these referrals from ChatGPT, and even Google start using it. I think even now, if you write a good post on Reddit, you will definitely rank for it. So it's still used.
Frank, I didn't interrupt you there because it's amazing. Your flow of thoughts and the sharing definitely appreciated, because there's a lot of important nuggets there, right, for people to learn and act upon. We've got about 15 minutes to go. I want to ask you a couple of things and give you the opportunity to ask me if you want to ask me something. So we've talked quite a bit about search optimization, answer engine optimization, rewriting, redesigning pages, uh, blogs, LLM text, and whatnot, right? Fantastic stuff. A lot of it we're talking about sounds a bit like headless to me, right? I think Salesforce made news not too long ago, maybe a few weeks ago, when they said, how are they going to do better? Because they've been struggling, a lot of these SaaS companies. And you cannot charge by seats necessarily. Like we, provide APIs for other businesses to sort of go to market sooner, and it's usage based, and there's different licensing models, right? So all of us are reacting, being proactive and reactive to things that are happening there. So headless, right? Salesforce mentioned a lot of those interactions and integrations becoming
Yeah, yeah, they
headless.
would. Yeah, API
What I
only.
want to
Yeah.
ask you in that context is, how are you seeing the future of human integration into a lot of these systems? And here is what I specifically mean by that question. Are you still thinking about a world in the next 6 months to a year or 2 years where you see companies create new web applications, new mobile applications, or do you see those integrations become a bit more seamless and transparent? And by that I mean, if you're a WhatsApp user, you're not going to download a new app to do some integration. You are actually integrating this new service or the new product that you're consuming through WhatsApp essentially, or through Instagram, or through some other tool that you might already be using. It could be email, it could be iMessage, it could be something else. In other words, the web applications and mobile apps becoming replaced to some extent or to a large extent by these other applications that are kind of inbuilt and embedded into your lifestyle, so to speak. I'm not going to download an app because I have a Snowpal app right now that I download, but maybe it's easy for me to use the Snowpal functionality if I'm on iMessage or WhatsApp versus download the app or go to snowpal.com. I mean, do you see what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, I think you're talking about NCPs, and I think how they're shaping the new wave of personalization. Because yeah, I mean, I agree. So rather than, like, for instance, co-work is a typical example from Claude, where you have one app, and then through co-work you use NCPs and you use connectors to integrate with all your tools. So Salesforce, HubSpot, Slack, etc. So you use one tool, and then is extremely personalized. So the tool has access to all the other tools you subscribe. So you don't have to go and use the other tools. That means that, as you were saying, at that point, there is no point for these other tools to have any user interface because they're
Absolutely.
just using their data, right? So it's their only data repositories or functionality repository. They're not
So do
you're
you
not
see
going.
that as the future?
I think is a big. I don't know. I mean, we are at the frontier, right? Because we are there where we're developers, we're interested in this. I I think it would be quite hard uh, for the general public to use it. I think there is obviously a trend, but it needs to be
I mean, that's
seamless.
why I said WhatsApp, right?
Structured.
Let's say if you're a general
Yeah,
public in India or Brazil, one of the largest, two of the, I think if I'm not wrong, the user base of WhatsApp is humongous in those countries, right? So people are, I mean, I've talked to people back in India, Frank, where, uh,
yeah,
I don't know, we were talking to some a YouTuber a while ago for ad placements and whatnot for our company. And, he has a few million subscribers, right? So fairly big YouTuber. And they had more than one YouTube channel. And I was asking them how they run their business. I was just curious to know what kind of tools they were using so we could help them build some tools or perhaps have them use our tools. But you may be surprised or otherwise to learn that they told me that, hey, you know what? I don't really use any other tool. And they didn't call out for WhatsApp as a tool, but that's all that they did use. So they were running their entire business of multiple YouTube channels on WhatsApp, which is like a single threaded app. You know what I mean? It's not even like you can create channels or, I mean, there's some support these days for channels and whatnot, but I'm just saying in general. So, which means I didn't appreciate the challenge we had at the time, but I do now. That company is not going to download a new app. It's not going to sign up for a new service. But if you made that integration literally on WhatsApp, then they would be more willing to check out your services, right? So, to your point about people who are not necessarily at the forefront of technological changes, we have to take those changes closer to where they are, which could be on Instagram, which could be on TikTok, or it could be on WhatsApp. You see what I mean, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think develop. Uh, I think integration is the next thing. Is getting your product to be as accessible as possible uh, by APIs, by MCPs. So I think this is what I think my next step in some of the products I've been developing is to create an MCP so that becomes accessible to other tools. So tell the other tools, look, we exist. This is how you can call us. This is how you've, authenticate a user. This is once you're authenticated, this is what you can do when you can call us. So in this way, people get you to use our tools or our services using other services seamlessly, but basically without even knowing that they're using us. But I
Absolutely,
think
right?
I think
Make
this is the future. I think I think APIs are good. So it's just getting your products out there. I think with this sort of stuff, definitely APIs and MCPs. I would say that's the future
perfect,
for
right? Exactly what we are an API company and we are working on MCP. So thank you for saying
sure.
that. I've been trying to educate other people on that as well. This was incredibly amazing, Frank. So we got about 10 minutes to go, and I have more time if you want to talk about other things. I've asked you a bunch, and you've had some amazing answers and directions for a lot of us, so we truly appreciate that. Any questions? I have a couple of more things to ask you, but before I do that, this is your opportunity to ask me anything that you want to ask me if there is something you want to ask me.
Yeah, I think I just want to know. Obviously, we've been talking about um, people using AI to discover. But I just want to know from your personal point of view, what you're using AI for. Are you using AI professionally, and then what are you using it for, and then also in your personal life, have you started using agents to book flights for you? Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yep, thank you. I'll tell you professionally first, and then I'll come to the personal side. Um, we really quickly, right? We One of the things we do is build APIs, publish them, so other businesses can build software quicker. That's basically one of the things we do from a B2B standpoint. We had designed it originally with its RESTful integration essentially, right? So humans using our APIs and endpoints to build software quickly and cheaply and efficiently. But now it's agents beginning to consume these APIs and endpoints, right? The future
Yeah,
is not just humans. So you mentioned MCP. So that's one of the many things we are trying to work on right now, which is to build an MCP server so the integration between the other companies and their products and our APIs is not happening through a RESTful integration necessarily, but it's happening
right.
through agents who are working across those APIs, not exactly knowing what these endpoints are, right? They don't care,
Okay.
but they need to sort of work across those more generically in a federated manner, for lack of a better word. So that's very specifically what we're doing from an API standpoint. But as we build let me take that one step further. Now we build this MCP server so other AI agents can consume our APIs seamlessly. But we also have to build these AI agents as examples because our products are industry agnostic, Frank. So we have to still showcase those examples saying, hey, this is how an AI agent for the travel industry might look like when it's using Snowpal APIs. This is how an insurance agent, AI agent might look like when it's using our APIs. So we have to go start building some of those sample agents, if you will, so
Yeah,
other companies and our potential clients can learn what it is that they might need to build, how they might need to build it, and how that integration might work, right? So that's kind of at the highest level some of what we are starting to work on from a professional standpoint. But also I'll add one more thing, right? We talked about UI, UX, and all those things more at a higher level, Frank, fundamentally the approach to building software has changed. I mean, whether people want to accept it or not is a topic for another
yeah,
podcast altogether. Because I know developers, very good ones, sometimes a little bit in denial, if you will, maybe inadvertently, that things are not changing. We were going to talk about vibe coding, but there are people who are not coders who are starting to contribute to the code base. I've talked to a number of founders who've never written code, who've taken their ideas to production. But now, what happens once you go live without developers in the team? That's a different problem. You might need some developers, some senior developers, but not as many as you had earlier. So, I think our professional lifestyles have to change. If it hasn't changed seismically, then you're still in denial, is what I feel like, right? People have to be willing to accept that change. Just like internet changed things 25 years ago, I think AI has taken it to a slightly different level, right? So you're going to have to go to that level slowly but surely and start building things very differently, which means your architecture will be different. Your approach will be different. Your design will be different. Your methodologies will be different. Your SDLC will be different, and how you do everything is going to have to be quite different. And anything that you do out of muscle memory that hasn't changed may or may not hold you in good stead, right? That's just a general answer. Hopefully some of it makes sense from a professional standpoint. I'll answer the personal side of the question, right? I've not started using agents to make those bookings or anything of that nature just as yet. But the very basic tools outside of being building software, let's say for getting stuff done, or even for building, let's say I'll take an example. I don't know whether it's professional or personal or somewhere in between. I used to love Canva as a product, right? For many reasons. One is, I read about the founder and all the struggles she had and how brilliantly she pulled off a beautiful product, but I also
yeah.
like the product. But in the last 12 months or so, Frank, I have to tell you, it's the least I've actually used Canva in my entire time using Canva. Whether it's professional or personal, I find that there are companies that are sometimes stuck where they're providing AI integration and AI chatbots where things are supposed to be better, but it's not helping. At least it's my personal opinion. Every time I've gone to Canva to use their AI tools to get stuff done, it's actually
Yeah,
made me less productive. And I'll take that to the personal side as well when I'm doing things that for fun or whatnot. uh, you the challenge is not in there not being enough tools, but I think the challenge is, from a personal standpoint, is that sometimes there are way too many tools, but you don't know which one actually makes the most sense to you. Right now that you mentioned there's a proliferation of technologies around AI, you don't know which ones are going to stand the test of time a year, two
Yeah,
years, 3 years down the road. So before you sign up for that subscription and go gaga over something, you at least want to know personally that, hey, I'm investing some time and effort creating content on these platforms, and I don't want to have to migrate 12 months down the road because they did not survive as a company, right? So
yeah,
using Claude more than anything else, I think, off late. But it's a combination of tools. Even, let's say the other day I was reviewing a contract for verbiage. So when I go to Google and Gemini and ask it to give me some thoughts, and then I go to Claude, and then I go to ChatGPT, and I have subscriptions on more than one of these, even at a personal level, it's kind of amazing how different sometimes these answers are. I mean, there is some
yeah,
similarity between these answers, but sometimes they're quite conflicting, and you're wondering, okay, if you have to
yeah.
trust this AI and LLMs, and if I have to trust one versus the other, I mean, why is there such a difference? I mean, is there a bias, or maybe the models and the algorithms and whatnot, things are probably different. So at a personal level, as much as your question was personal professional, but when you're an engineer, even when you're using these tools at a personal level, the engineer in you is still well and alive, right? So you're still you're introspective, you're skeptical, so you try to pick
Yeah,
the right set of tools available. So I think, I don't know if any of us goes by a day without using one of these tools. I think it's fair to say, whatever the tools are, even if it's the simplest version of the chat GPT, the unpaid version that somebody is using, I have I have to say, I don't know what the numbers are, that people are using it on a daily basis. So our professional and personal lifestyles have to have changed across the globe, right? You live in England or UK, I live in the US, I talk to people across the globe, and I don't think the answers are being any different, right? And it explains why, the summit is happening tomorrow in China. The market's always been up. I don't know how it is in UK, but the US stock market's been in this state of absolute frenzy for the last five to
yeah,
six
no,
weeks that even if you did
no,
not believe in AI, if you look at the numbers, you're like, you know what, maybe I'm missing something. There's going to be some FOMO at some point. I know it was a long answer, but hopefully some part of the
yeah.
ramble made some sense there, Frank. Yeah.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely. I actually agree with you in everything you said. Um, I can tell you that personally, in my personal life, I use AI with paperwork as tax, replying to letters, again invoice from my lease. So just all the things that I had to get help, professional help sometimes. I have a letter that I need to get, a lawyer or someone with some knowledge of the law to help me to reply. I had tell you, I had a problem with my health insurance because I was trying to claim some physio, and they said no, it's pre-existing medical condition. I said no, it's not pre-existing medical condition, and we went back and forth. Then I got ChatGPT to write me a long reply back, citing the law, and then I got my doctors to write me a letter. Then in the end, they lost the case, and yesterday I just got a refund. So they refund all the money that I spent on physio. Now, if I had to get a lawyer, then it would have cost me. I would have had no economical sense because I would have to spend money to hire someone, and then maybe if I win the case, I'll get the money back to pay that person. So these little things that in my personal life, it's, they take time and energy. Now I can kind of delegate to to
No,
to
absolutely. So, Frank,
to
can I
that.
ask you, do you have another 10 minutes for me to ask you a couple of things?
Yeah, yeah, go for it, go for it,
So, that's a great
please.
point you make there, right? So, I want to get your thoughts on the less technical stuff, right? Less technical stuff, which is, you have a great example there of you have a need, you had a need there, you didn't have to hire a lawyer or any
Yeah,
help, and you're able to figure this out using these LLMs. That's an
yeah,
impact on somebody's business, somebody's career. Someone who could have made money is not making that anymore, right?
I know.
And that's the
Yeah,
same for us, right? It's the same for people like us, for everybody. So what does it mean? Let's talk geo I mean, not geopolitics, but let's talk macro, if you will. What How do you see
yeah.
this? uh, I mean, you live in you said UK. Do you live in London, Frank?
I do. Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so, well, we are allies, right? I live in the US, in Washington, D.C.,
yeah.
you're in London. Um, Cultural similarities are there, but still there are some differences as well. There's an ocean in between. How are you seeing the economic impact of AI in the part of the world that you're living in? London's a beautiful city. I've been there a couple of times. What is the impact there from the
Yeah,
ground, from somebody who's living there?
yeah. So the unemployment rate is growing, and I think we have the highest unemployment rate ever for for the young generation. So I think everyone everyone who's below 25, I think, has been the highest unemployment rate of everyone under 25. I have three kids. I'm extremely worried about them, their future, what they are going to do. Um, I come from a software development background. This was one of the safest job. Being an engineer, being an engineer, a
Frank,
lawyer, and a
thanks for using the
yeah,
past tense. It was the safest job, but please go on.
it
Yeah.
was. It was. So in the past was being an engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. These were the
If you
safest
said maybe you're
safest job.
Indian, I don't know if you're Indian because you
I
said
think
lawyer, doctor, and engineer.
I
That's how
know
we growing up in India. Those were the only choices all of us were given, actually. Yeah.
in Italy is the same. In Italy is the same. So I think engineer highly impacted by this, um, especially junior engineers or junior software developers. Um, the other thing is like it's difficult to start a career now because the junior jobs are completely being replaced by AI. You can 100% get AI to do the job that a junior engineer. So it's very difficult for these people to get work, to get into to start having a first job. Uh, for people like us, we can still manage teams. We can maybe manage a team of agents. Uh, you still need to have a developer. As you were saying, you get founders now, vibe coding all the way to production, but then you still need to have a technical person to understand what's going on. I think we're still in demand as a senior developers or someone who has some kind of experience, many years of experience. So this is what I'm fearing of people starting to, the first job, second job. So I think then I said obviously lawyers uh, highly impacted by this. I think there are now. I actually I worked with a law firm who has created a very good way uh, to 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 give a software to other lawyers so where they could check AI for hallucinations, because I think this is one of the main problems. I was talking to a friend that is a lawyer, and he said, "Look, there's been a lot of hallucinations. People are kind of embarrassed in the field because they've been going in front of a judge, a senior lawyer, basically citing completely hallucinating about the law,
Wow.
about court case, and he said it's like it was very embarrassing. So now the lawyers are really worried about this because they've been embarrassed in the past. So I think there is now a demand for tools that can check for hallucinations, and that's what these guys that were working on. So they, like checking
So
facts, and I
much
think
like,
this,
for
yeah,
in engineering, if I could draw a parallel there, rather than
yeah,
write all the code, Now you're having tools write the code or generate the code, and you as a senior engineer is reviewing the code, right? You're not really writing a lot of the
Yeah,
code. Much like what you mentioned there for lawyers, right? They whatever work they would have probably done in the past, the tools and the LLMs are doing it, and what they're actually doing is checking, validating the correctness and the accuracy of what the tool actually had done. So instead of doing 100 things, you take the 100 things that the tool did and you do the two or three or five things to fix what's there, right? So there's a so which means junior lawyers, maybe you need, if you're in the US, you need to pass the bar to practice law. So those lawyers, still that part of the law changes. You still have a human in court, but every other lawyer that the human lawyer would have previously used and relied upon could be replaced by agents, right? So those junior lawyers are going to have a moment of reckoning, much like the junior developers that you said earlier.
yeah. Then you create this problem where these guys are not going to go on the job ladder, which means that we will eventually retire, and there will be a gap. There will be no one left.
There's no mid level, there's no senior lawyer because there's nobody there.
Yeah, no one there because you're not getting the junior to become senior or mid level. So there will be at the moment you will have mid levels and senior. Then you will probably mid level will go because will be replaced by AI. The senior will stay. There will be nothing. Then the senior will retire or they will stop working. There will be no one left.
Absolutely
So
no one left. We got to go to Mars at that time, maybe.
So I don't have a solution for that. I just see as a potential problem because, yeah, we're
But
not giving.
Frank, you and I may not have a solution, but I'm just curious. Do you see governments think about this? I'm pretty sure. I hope they do. But or do you think there is going to be a hole that nobody is actually necessarily addressing this problem head on?
No, I don't think. No. So here in the UK, there is this project called AI Ready, which is basically the government wants uh, the 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 state, the UK, to be ready for AI, and this is a big infrastructure change. So they need to have a lot of data centers, and at the moment, we don't have enough. But I think there is a project by 2030 we need to get 50 gigabytes worth of power to be dedicated to data centers, and there is a bottleneck at the moment because everything runs on the grid and there is not enough power that flowing through the grid. So if you think about new job opportunities, I would say there will be new job opportunities about around energy, around getting, I guess, renewable energy into the grid, maintaining the data centers. So I would say it's like a job of the future is cleaning the machines in the data centers. That could be, new professions that we don't have right now. Or I also know about a a marketplace where agents can hire humans to do jobs they can't do. So now you can get hired by an agent that get paid by Bitcoin to solve capture because capture is still an issue for an agent. But imagine in the future you might have agents working on the behalf of a human that they need to have a problem to be solved and they can't do it because they don't have a physical presence in the world. So the agent will start hiring humans to do to do the
Wow.
work, and and more um, access and trust they have from us to use our own money and freedom to use our own money, more freedom they have to go ahead and spend it. So that means spend money to make money, like they might understand that there is an arbitrage situation in the market at the moment. So they can buy a service from you and then resell it to someone else because they saw that this other person needs your services. So they will become some kind of brokers. So they will have access to your money and they will be able to, hire humans. So that could become employers. Um, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question,
No,
but
no, you
yeah,
did. I was just going to say, I want to, as you were talking, I was just thinking about a graphic that actually came to mind. I'm going to pull that graphic that that I have here. Give me a
yeah,
second. I'm going to show that to you, and I can get your thoughts on that as well. Okay, so let me see if I can share this. We'll open the graphic because we're talking about. Okay, let me do a screen share. Okay. Do you see that? I saw this recently. I don't know who created this. You can look this up online. Have you seen this graphic before, Frank?
I have, yeah. I think uh, Diary of CEO, they've created it.
Oh,
I
okay.
think,
So
yeah, it's
just for
popular.
folks who have not seen this really quickly, I think a dot here represents 3.2 million people, and it says out of all the people in the world, we talk about AI. I feel like all the time. I have this conversation with guests on the podcast. When you go back to work, each of us is doing something that relates to it, and now you could live in your own world, thinking, well, you know what? If I know it, I always feel like if I know something, somebody else knows more about that thing, which is true a lot of the times, but not necessarily all the time, right? And then I saw this graphic, and there was a bit of a moment of realization for me. So again, going back to this 3.2 million people per square, out of all the people in the world, less than 1% are building with AI, not just playing with it, right? Less than 1%. And it says
Yeah,
here 2,500 dots is 8.1 billion people. Color is the most advanced AI interaction. And then in the, so never used AI, 84% of the world population. Free chatbot user, maybe somebody's using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, 16%, the free version, right? So they're asking questions and getting answers. 84, and that's 16. I mean, that's 100, but let's say there's a decimal there, so probably just shy of 100. So people are paying $20 a month is 0.3%, and the people who are actually using this to build something else is 0.04%. So I
yeah,
don't know if I've ever been in the 0.04% of anything in life.
yeah,
Just when I saw this thing, I was like, oh my goodness, right? Um,
yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts when you see this? I mean, does it concern you that the rest of the world is not doing it? Or does it give you comfort that, hey, no matter how little or how much you do, you're still in the top 0.04%. So if you played the human selfish role, does it give you solace that actually 99.96% of the population is not even there and you're there? How are you looking at this, Frank?
To be honest, I've been living in AI anxiety. Like, I'm not uh, checking the news every day. I can't test every single tool. I haven't played with Gemini for a while, and then I saw that, and I thought, what a relief! What a relief! So I immediately my stress level went down, um, because obviously with this new personalization of algorithms, as soon as I go to LinkedIn, everything is about AI. My newsfeed is about AI. I'm constantly bombarded. Over obviously for work, I'm seeing AI everywhere. But then that graph came along, and I thought, okay, I need to breathe and relax
And
and
then touch grass, right? Just touch grass and appreciate life.
exactly. So yeah, I mean, obviously you're in a little but we are in a little bubble, right? Because we know about all this. We are keep up to date. It's our job. But for many people, they have absolutely no clue. And
So does
I
that
know
mean?
about yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought there.
The other thing is so I think this there are loads of people. I mean, if you see it, the green was quite large,
Right.
um, and I think if you're using Google, and I don't know how many people are using Google, a lot of other people have been exposed to AI without even knowing that they were using it. So they were not actively using a chatbot, but they were consuming the content that was generated by AI. So I
But
think,
Frank, but
yeah,
that's like using a calculator, right? It's like saying
yeah,
when you're using a calculator, you know how to press the buttons and it gives you the numbers, but that does not make you a mathematician. That does not improve your math skills. So the 16% of the population that's using ChatGPT, me inclusive, when you're doing that interaction, you're not improving your skills necessarily. Maybe you're learning something along the way, but that is not preparing you for the future, right? So my question really
yeah,
kind of was, how are
mm,
people, how do you recommend? I mean, you said you had the AI anxiety and you felt at peace once you saw that you probably better off than 99.96% of the population out there. But is the world even going to be prepared for what's coming? It feels like a tsunami of changes that are going to come in terms of job cuts and layoffs and restructuring and whatnot. Whether you're anxious or otherwise, right? Ignorance is not necessarily bliss, right? Or never is bliss. So do you see something dramatically, I don't know, happen in the next 5 years?
100%. Yeah, I think there will be a lot of shifts. Yeah, a lot of job losses. I mean, is inevitable. Um, the other thing is, people are going to lose their jobs, and I know at the moment the stock market is flying. Likely, my pension fund is primarily invested in US tech, so I can't complain about it. Uh, but eventually, the you still need people to buy products. If everyone is out of job, then the high street
Yeah,
will
that they,
suffer.
they talk about the K-shaped economy, right? Where the wealthy. See, I heard somebody say this the other day, one of the founders of a company, I don't remember who it was. It was kind of scary, the statement. I'm paraphrasing what he said. He said that if the ultra wealthy
Yeah,
stopped buying what they did not need, not what they needed, if the ultra wealthy stop buying what they actually did not need, then there's going to be, there's going to be a recession of some sort. I think the
yeah,
magnitude of that statement, it took me a while to digest it, right? It's not what they need, but what they actually do not need. So the economy is kind of looking all right, it seems like, because wealthy people are buying what they don't want, what they don't actually need. And if they
yeah,
stop buying that, then we're in for a little bit of trouble here. So how do you recommend, as we get to the tail end of this, how do you recommend that kids out of college, young adults, people who are
yeah,
switching careers, right? I mean, I know. I mean, do you have any thoughts? Like, what do you tell your children? What do you tell other people as to how do you prepare? And I'll make this question a little bit more difficult for you if it isn't already that difficult. The answer I keep getting, Frank, is AI is not going to replace jobs. AI is going to replace people who know how to use AI. Whatever, however you phrase that thing, right? If you knew how to use AI, you're going to be better off than if you did not know how to use AI. Sure, I give that. I mean, I understand that. But even within people who kind of know how to use AI, how do you what do you
yeah,
recommend that people do? What should they be learning? How should they be preparing for this?
yeah. So, well, I mean, obviously, I'm concerned about it. I thought, obviously, science degree. I'm not sure. I think it's more about attitude. I would say is rather than the skills, is the ability to accept change, which is not easy to do. So accept the change, have eff- the, the skill here is the flexibility and adaptability. So you will adapt and look for opportunities. So I will say, I mean, I have a daughter that she likes animals. So, animal welfare. So I don't see issues with that. I don't think AI will replace that.
So,
Um,
Frank,
and
you've gone from medicine, law, and engineering to animal related stuff now.
yeah. So I think this one, I think it's like find something you like. Really, I think that's the secret. Find your passion and go for it, because I think if you have a passion in something, you will make it happen, and it won't become just a job that you do for money. Will become your identity, that you're lucky to get paid for it, but becomes your identity. I love my job, so it's obviously, I love building stuff. I have a Every time I develop something and it works, I get kick out of it. I it's I could do it for free. I've just released this thing for free. So I think that's the secret: is find something, is find your passion, and then with or without AI, you make it work. I think. Um, yeah, I always say, I was an engineer, and I like building stuff, and I'm still building stuff. Maybe you don't need a degree now. That's the other thing, is that in the UK, and I know in the US, getting a degree is extremely expensive. You start your career in debt. In the UK, you probably have £100,000, which is about $120,000, $130,000 in debt, and you are 22, and you start your career with a massive debt that you take two two decades, and you won't be able to buy a house, and you still pay that debt. So I'm not sure if uh, I will, suggest my kids to go to college. Obviously, it's a life experience. I went and I loved it. I'm sure they would like to go, but maybe it's not necessary in the future, because it's just, what are you going to study? I don't know. I don't know what.
Frank, the number
Yeah,
of times I've asked this question on the podcast, I'm not even making this up. You can go back and watch some of them. If the guest would hire based on a college diploma, and if it was worth borrowing that amount of money, you whatever you answered there without me asking the question is literally a question I've asked of all a number of people, and I could not agree more with what you've said there, right? I actually had a coworker not too long ago who was just around my age, and his wife was around my age as well. And then he was very happy one day when he came to work, and I'm like, "Hey, what's the deal?" And he goes, "My wife paid half her college loan." I thought he was joking, literally. I was not. I know I'm not unaware of the cost of college education in the US, but I still thought that couldn't be true. But it was true. And he said it took her 17 years to pay off the college loan. And I read an article about someone else. I live in Virginia. The neighboring state is West Virginia, one of the poorest states in the country, if I'm not wrong. A teacher, one of the most noble professions, right? They are building the next generation of people, kids.
yeah,
She had an English degree, if I'm not wrong, and she didn't find work. This was like before AI, 5 years ago. And someone told her, nope, you got to do a master's. She borrowed more money, went back to college, did a master's degree in English literature or something along those lines. And then she accrued even more debt.
yeah,
And she's like, I don't even know how I'm going to pay this off because you get paid really very little money, unfortunately, as a teacher in the country. So, and then you see colleges offer like, what is it? I mean, I'm not undermining any diplomas and degrees, to each their own, but I see
yeah,
someone studied, I think, South American culture, and she borrowed like, I don't know, $80,000. I mean, I don't know how many jobs there are out there. Somebody's going to hire you to do something along those lines. But let me ask you this, Frank. In UK, when you are interviewing somebody, as much as the skill is different and independent of the diploma, is there a social stigma where you're like, hey, you know what, this person has a college diploma, that person does not have one, or this person has a college degree from a highly ranked school versus this person has a college degree from an okayish college? Does that still play into the minds of the interviewers because some of us are from the past, or has that already begun to change from what you've seen?
yeah. So it's become to change, because um, the big banks, the big institutions, so Goldman and Sachs, and the big banks, the big law firms, they're not employed, they're not recruiting. So a degree from this Oxbridge. So Oxbridge would be Cambridge, Oxford, and then a few more. Very selective institutions where you pay way more to get in. You need to have A or A stars in all your subjects just to get to be interviewed. So they take the best students. So they usually had a very clean path into the banking industry or into the law or medicine. They're not recruiting anymore. So that's the problem. It's like these junior guys have spent a lot of money to get educated, to get a degree. Now they can't find
Oh
work.
my goodness. And then they have the debt that they have to pay off.
And they had a larger debt than the normal college degree. So at that point, I will probably ask them. So if someone gave you £200,000, would you go to college or would you set up a business and spend a year working on something you like, learning something you like in your own way, and try it out? And that
So
could be
if I
anything.
came to, if you were interviewing me today hypothetically, and I did not have a college diploma, but I knew what I did do know, would that play a role, like even subconsciously and inadvertently in your mind, Frank? Or have you gone past that point where, like, you know what, I honestly don't care what Krish's credentials are. I only care for what Krish actually does know and can do for me.
Okay, so when I used to interview people, I didn't really care about their degree. I had technical questions. I used to have questions where people have straight answers. I had one impossible questions where there was no answer. It was impossible to solve. And I just wanted to know the way they were reasoning. So I gave them an impossible problem to solve. And that was the most interesting thing for me. I wanted to check problem solving because in our industry, online marketing, there is no the university doesn't prepare you for anything. Is
The
more
university
about
does not prepare anybody for anything in life, is my personal opinion.
yeah. So in my industry, you get a Google certification, you get a LinkedIn diploma, but you don't really the college degree
Okay,
doesn't really
Frank, I'm going to ask you another difficult, I'm going to throw a curveball there. You are
go for it.
trying to, you're not worried about Krish's credentials. You only want to know what Krish knows. And you're just like me. Correct me if I'm wrong, you've drunk the AI Kool-Aid. You totally believe in tools and efficiencies and whatnot, which means, can Krish actually be using Claude and ChatGPT to answer the questions that Frank's going to ask during the interview, or do you expect me to not use those tools while I answer the questions?
Yeah, so I think we probably is a very tricky one. So I, I think I will probably realize if you're using it, because I think the tools are not fast enough, but they might be. I know that there are people like building avatars and stuff like that that can be very reactive and very quick. But I will probably ask you how you use it. How do you use it? What skills have you created? What how what's how would you have trained? I think one of the main thing that I've seen that people are getting wrong is to give AI the right context. So we'll ask you, how would you use AI with the right context to give you the best outcome? Because that's yeah, yeah. I've seen people like giving AI a document without any context. So let's say I've done 6 years worth of work for someone, and then I'm sending them the monthly report, right? And then the monthly reports get heavily criticized because of that month report because there is no context. The AI doesn't know what we talked about that month, doesn't know the whole background story, so it doesn't make any sense, and AI doesn't work like that. So I want to know how you're using it, how you're training the AI to give you the best support you
Perfect, great. In
can.
other words, you're not trying to not have them use the tools. You're saying, hey, use all the tools that you can use and that's available to us in and see how you can do things better using the plethora of tools, which makes a lot of sense because when I hear people test somebody by virtue of by saying don't use the tool, that doesn't make much sense because you're going to anyway need the tool to begin with.
Yeah, it's pointless. You just have to. The other thing is like this is happening anyway, so they would probably use it. Um, yeah, but yeah, I think
No, makes sense, right?
there is,
I
there
have
is
only
nothing.
I have
Last
only one
question.
last thing to
Go
ask
for
you
it.
about food, but anything else you want to ask me? Professional, personal, work, geopolitics, economics, you can ask me anything.
Um, okay, I will leave the politics out because this is a bit delicate, and even in the UK, is delicate. I never been to Washington. I just wanted to know if for the movies that I see on TV, it looks not really like a fun place. Very institutional, and you obviously got the White House and all the politicians there. As a someone who lives there, how compares to a place like New York or
Oh,
LA?
that's a
You,
brilliant question. I'll give you an answer which might be a little bit biased, but I'll give it to you regardless. I've lived here most of my adult life. I came to the US when I was very young. I lived in Texas for a couple of years, but most of my life I've lived here, right? So I think I at least am in a position to answer that question. I live about 25 miles ish west of DC, but in the metro. I've been running a software company for many years. I used to work for other people before then. This is my career, right? And most of my career has been in the area. Even though I work for clients across the country, I was located here on the East Coast. Initially, Frank, as a product person,
yeah.
California or the Bay Area would have been a much better fit for someone like me, or
Okay.
Seattle, for instance. So early years, I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm doing stuff like I would be doing it there, but I'm here. So I was not necessarily certain, right, whether this
Mm.
was the right place for me. And then, sometimes you move to a place and it's not that easy when you have a family to relocate and things of that nature. So we decided we'll settle down here. We live in Northern Virginia, which is like a beautiful part of the city here, not too far from the airport. And I go to DC and I'll answer this question like the way I've posted my content, right? The non technical content, which I do create content every so often for whatever reason. And I always tag it saying incredible DC because I like DC for many reasons. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why I genuinely like it. I like to run into these important tech people. And you might be
Yeah.
wondering, okay, sure, what does DC have anything to do with that? You know, the number of people that the kind of people and the number of people who show up in this part of the world, Frank, for these important meetings,
Yeah.
it's absolutely unparalleled, right? I've seen almost a lot of the tech CEOs. A week and a half ago, your king was here, right, for a state
I
dinner.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was there late in the evening, really late at night. There was hardly anybody there, 11:30 or close to midnight. I knew Jensen Huang was going to attend the dinner, and I knew
Yeah.
he's going to exit the White House somewhere in the DC area, right? And I've lived here long enough so I can kind of feel where that it might be while it changes all the time. I just wanted to see him, right? I love Jensen Huang, like for many reasons. I've never seen him before. So there was nobody, and I'm like, I don't know whether he's going to walk through this way, right? This is the guy who's running the world's largest company. Well, lo behold,
Yeah.
at midnight, I see two people walking towards me. I'm like, that's got to be somebody who's running NVIDIA. And it was Jensen Huang, right? I just stood quietly. I didn't say a thing. I just took a quick video. And then I go back home and try to create content around the 2 minutes, right? On the 60 seconds. But I'm giving you one example, right? Just seeing somebody who builds software, who thinks about software all the time, and also
Yeah.
currently we're working on a fintech API, so we also do some trading and investing. Uh, so I know what's kind of happening in the stock market as well. And Nvidia, whether or not you know, unless you're living under a rock, you would know what they do. Seeing somebody who runs that company, $5.4 trillion, bigger than the stock markets of 97% of the world, right? I don't know what the size of the stock market in UK is, but this number is bigger than the stock markets in most of the world countries, right?
Yeah,
And
100%.
just seeing the humility of such people who just, you realize that they're human too. I mean, they're just
Yeah,
walking on earth, they're just smiling, they say hello, and then they go back to where they go to. Gives me a sense of hope and inspiration, saying, you know what, you work hard, you don't expect things, right? You sow the seeds, you do everything on a daily basis, you don't know when things change or what happens, but you do
yeah,
your part, right? I mean, Jensen Huang didn't run a $5.3 trillion company like 10 years ago, right? They were pretty small even 4 years ago. And I just give you one example. Tim Cook was just a few feet behind. And
oh
then
my,
I saw the Salesforce CEO walk by. And this happens in DC. I don't know how many cities in the world you could say that something like this happens. And even
probably.
when these big leaders come to DC, of course, they're going into the White House, but I'm like walking as just somewhere outside the White House. But I know that those important decisions are being made in those buildings that I'm only like, a few
Yeah,
blocks away from. And that gives me, I mean, this is just personal and I can only speak to myself. So I drag my wife. She's not interested in this kind of stuff, but I still drag her. We wait there for like 4 hours to see somebody. And then I make conversation with people. There's a variety of different languages that are spoken. On
yeah,
any day I go to DC, there's different languages. So it's an incredible city, right? But it's not like New York. New York is beautiful,
yeah,
4 hours away. It's financial, right? There's other kinds of excitement that happens there. But New York
yeah,
is more like London, right? You know what I mean? I don't know how much difference you might tell between London and New York, but
yeah,
DC is very different. You have to like politics to some extent, or you have
yeah,
to not like politics either way. So you appreciate living in the city. But if you don't appreciate this kind of stuff, and the story of me running into Jensen Hong does not
yeah,
resonate with you, then all that DC would have to offer is beautiful museums, some good food, I should say. Maybe not like New York, but still decent food, um, and a variety of people, and a fair bit of diversity as well, right? You go to DC. I mean, the other day I was in DC. I spoke to somebody who's Russian. She lives in California, but I had like a 40-minute chat. Then I talked to somebody who was Turkish, and then somebody else was from the Middle East. So I kind of like the collectively rich experience of people and leaders and tech people coming to DC. So yeah, if you're ever here in the metro, give me a holler. I will show you around. There's some good places to eat.
yeah,
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
my long story about Washington DC.
Well, you sold it well. You sold
Thank
it
you.
well.
I wish
So
I'd sell my APIs as well as I sold DC, but as long as I sold something, I'm good. So my
yeah,
last question to you, Frank, and again, really appreciate your time, thoughts,
no problem.
your passion. We can all see that you're good at what you do. So definitely, we'll include a link to your profile and to your company, and
Thank
so
you.
people can definitely check you out and check your company out. Right. My last question to you is: you're going out for dinner somewhere in London. I know London's got some great places to eat. Um, you, what would your order of appetizer, entree, and dessert be? They don't all have to come from the same cuisine, but just one dish from each of those three categories.
That's a uh, very good question. So I'm Italian, so I will um, I will go for something a bit Italian, a bit European. So as a starter, we'll go with tapas, which is this Spanish uh, kind of street food.
Okay.
So I like fish, so I will go with a mix fried um, seafood, so calamari as a starter. Uh, as a first course, I will have my favorite dish, which is spaghetti with clams, which I can't find in London, unfortunately. They're not fresh enough. So every time I go to Italy, my family knows that that's the dish. that needs to be ready for me. Has been my favorite dish since I was small. And then as a as a second, I would say I'm a simple guy. I will go for a, a good quality steak, which yeah, which I like. I do occasionally barbecues at home. I think is the way I like to socialize with my neighbors. We have a street. Okay, so here in the UK, you are allowed to close your street for social reason once a
Hmm.
month. So once a month we shut the roads and the kids they come out and play. And then once a year we do a street party. So we hire a bouncy castle, we hire an ice cream van, a band, and all the neighbors they get together. It's a small community. It's a kind of a small village, and I'm usually in charge of the barbecue, which I'm not
Lovely.
sure if it's a good. I don't. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad. Uh, but it's a good way to socialize. And I've been to Australia a couple of times. When in a few years ago, my business had an office in Australia, so I used to go there. And barbecuing is very big in Australia. And I kind
Mm.
of start liking it. And yeah, if you go in the outback, you have all sorts of meats, like including a crocodile or kangaroo.
Wow.
I don't recommend crocodile. I do really like it. Kangaroo was okay. Um, those ones are the sort of foods I will.
What about the dessert?
So dessert, I like tiramisu. Again, as Italian, I tried to do it a few times here. I always get the coffee ratio wrong. So it's either soggy or too dry. So my daughter is the same. They've been trying to get the recipe from our family, but we are not getting it right. So yeah, we're still working on it, but definitely order
Oh,
a good quality tiramisu.
oh, beautiful. You made somebody who's
Yeah.
vegetarian hungry with all of the kangaroo
Yeah.
and the crocodile and the steak that you mentioned there.
But to be honest, we're trying to be. Well, my wife has been vegetarian for a year and a half, so we're trying to shift. But with kids, it's hard because it's hard to find veg that everyone likes. But
Right.
that's why
Totally.
I said steak simple. We're trying to have simple, quick to cook food, and rather than complicated things that takes ages.
Frank, if you know,
Fresh ingredients. Yeah,
you probably know Anthony Bourdain, right?
yeah,
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 I miss him sorely. But in one of the
yeah.
episodes, he said that he had been to this. I come from the southern part of India originally, so he visits the southern part of India and he eats vegetarian. He's not somebody who ate vegetarian quite a bit at the time, and he eats a dish. I can't remember what he ordered in that episode. And then after he takes the first bite, if I remember correctly, here's what he said. I'm paraphrasing it. He says, if only I knew vegetarian food could be this good, I might have tried some more, right? And I think that beautifully summarizes vegetarian food. And I think for anybody who wants to give that a shot, I might be biased. I always recommend go to India. You're in UK, so there's quite a bit of Indian food there. But if
There
you have
is.
to go to, you go to the real place where a lot of this comes from. There's some amazing vegetarian food. I think at least back in India, I
The
have to
thing
say.
is, you're absolutely right. When we go to an Indian restaurant, we just take vegetarian food. It's the best place because of the variety and the quality, and how, it tastes so good. And I
And
don't
in
think,
England, in UK in
yeah,
particular, Frank, I'll tell you because I don't know if you've tried Indian food in the US. It's not the same, right? If you've got to eat good Indian food, I tell people on the podcast, I've said many times, you either have to be in India, but if you're not in India, if you're in Singapore, you can have some incredible South Indian food. It's just amazing.
yeah,
It's as authentic as it can be. But if you can't go that far, I always tell people to go to UK, because when I was there a couple of times, I was like, man, this Indian food here is good. In the US, I think the problem, Frank, is a lot of the engineers who migrated here after 20 years of writing code, whether good, bad, or ugly, decided that they want to do something else and they opened restaurants. So
So that
that ends
it's
up being terrible, absolutely terrible, because you're neither a good developer or a good chef.
yeah,
That doesn't help. Yeah, it does not
yeah.
help.
But
But
here
this
there
is,
is a yeah,
sorry, go
Indian
ahead.
food. I said in the UK, Indian food came in 1960s. That's where the government encouraged Indian, I think from the southeast, to come to the UK to cook and give the British people a different type of food because I think they were just eating
Bored.
potatoes and road. Yeah,
I'm not surprised, because we were in Scotland many years ago. I go to this little tiny village in Scotland. It was absolutely beautiful place. And it is like a Scottish cuisine. And we were like apprehensive, because we were like, hey, are they going to have any vegetarian food? And then we go to open the menu in this authentic Scottish place in small town Scotland somewhere. And the very first item I saw under appetizers was like veggie samosa. I was like, wow, that's quite
yeah,
authentic Scottish, isn't it? Right? So I brought a smile to my face, and we're like, yep, we want that. We want two orders of that dish straight away.
yeah. So yeah, there's big tradition, big tradition. I
Perfect.
think
This is amazing, Frank. I'm going
yeah,
to let you have your closing comment. Just tell us, however you want to wrap this podcast up, and just stay for a minute after you have your closing comment. But before you do that, I'm just going to say one more time, thanks to Frank Vitetta.
yeah,
Really enjoyed the chat. Founder and CEO of Orchid Box, LLM Scout, and CodeScout. We talked about many things, and the last 30 minutes was just as enjoyable as the first 90, 60 minutes or so that was more technical. Definitely do check out Frank's LinkedIn profile, and anything else that you want for me to include, Frank, we are happy to include that. That being said, closing comment, take it away.
I think it's personally I really enjoyed. I think we have a good chemistry, Krish. I mean, would be happy to come back and talk about other things. Uh,
Absolutely.
very enjoyable. I I don't do this very often, but I really had a great time with a really nice chat. So yeah, well done for setting it up, and
Oh, thank
we'll
you. But
definitely.
anything you want to tell our audience about your company, about anything else?
I think yeah. So if if you guys interested, we have this product called LLM Scout. We monitor AI mentions online, so that if you have a brand and you want to know how your brand is cited on ChatGPT, if ChatGPT is hallucinating or is recommending users product or service that you don't do, or maybe they are missing a service that you actually do, you can use our tool to find out. Yeah,
Perfect. I
that's
just pulled it up here. With that said, folks, we will call it wraps here. Thanks, Frank. Much appreciate your time.
no problem.